a few more people. And first of all, for those who do not know me, I'm actually Dr. Mariati. I am an aesthetic consultant for Stella Clinic in Sawijir. So the topic today is a very interesting one. It's called liquid facelift, which is actually one of my expertise. Actually, it's one of my favorite subjects because I'm an expert injector, and there are different levels of aesthetic doctors that you find in the market. But you have those who actually love injections like me, and we actually undergo specialized training just to learn how to inject. Like, for example, you go for the cadaver trainings, and then you have like advanced technique filler training, and we also do fillers not only to beautify, but also to fix structural problems and other things. Okay. So we're just gonna wait another 2-3 minutes, and then I will actually start. Okay. So I'm just gonna start sharing. My screen first. Okay. I hope you can see. Yeah, we talk about liquid facelift today. Okay. So how are you guys coping with MCO? I think I kind of like this working from home situation. It allows me time to, handle the things at home, because most of the time I was when we didn't have the MCO, I was working a lot and I didn't have time to look at my house. So I moved just before the MCO, so I had enough time to unpack, get rid of all stuff, and realize how much I was a hoarder. And I try my best not to hoard stuff anymore. So although now it's quite nice because we are allowed to go out, and sometimes you can go and have a drink or coffee with a friend. Social isolation is actually quite traumatizing to a lot of people, because especially in Malaysia, we're a very highly socialized nation where people are always interacting with other people, and we have like a very high household number of people living in one house compared to, because we're Asians, I mean, compared to the European countries or the other countries where they are more towards individuals. Yeah, so, and a lot of people actually get a bit depressed because they don't get to go out or see their friends. But, there's also a good time to find what you like and start a new hobby. Like, I started a small garden on my balcony. So at least when I miss the green, I'll just go out to my balcony and look, I've got some green plants there, which is quite helpful. All right, I guess most everyone is here. Okay, let's start with today's topic. Today's topic is called liquid facelift, and I will explain to you what it really means. Okay, so what is a liquid facelift? So sometimes you Google facelift and then you come across facelift and liquid facelift. And you wonder, what is liquid facelift? What's the difference? So when people talk about a facelift, it is a surgical procedure that has to be done by a trained plastic surgeon. And what they actually do is they cut. Normally they cut behind the ear here, or sometimes up on the temple, and they pull and they cut. And what is it that they're pulling is a layer of muscle, which we call the SMAS, which is a superficial muscle layer that is just below the fat pads, and they pull it tight, and then it tightens up your face from inside. So that is a surgical procedure. It can only be done by a plastic surgeon, a certified plastic surgeon. Okay, be careful. There's a lot of people, like recently I saw on, there was something on the news about the rise of fake gurus during this MCO, during this COVID period, where a lot of people claim to be gurus, but they're not. The same thing, if your doctor claims to be a plastic surgeon, be sure that you know that he has the credential as a plastic surgeon, and also look out for any medical legal cases against a surgeon, because that is also quite common. Right, so that is a typical traditional facelift where you actually have to cut. It's either you pull with threads or you pull the SMAS, but you suture it. And normally a traditional facelift has a downtime between 2 to 1 month, and it actually lasts between 5 to 10 years, depending on how well you look after your face. Okay, that's one. And then now we go to what is a liquid facelift. So when we talk about liquid facelift, basically we're talking about a facelift that's using all liquids. So it's either using fillers or Botox or botulinum toxin, right? And we inject and we place the fillers up the face in a certain manner to fix the sagginess of the loss of volume and give you a complete lift without having to cut. And the good thing about liquid facelift is that you don't have to have any downtime. Like for example, you're interested in this and you say, oh, Dr. Mar, I want to see you tomorrow. And you come tomorrow and say, oh, I need a liquid facelift. And I say, okay, fine. If you're willing for the price, then let's do it. And you do it tomorrow, and on Monday you can just go to work, and maybe you might have a bruise or two which you can cover with makeup. But basically, you do not have that 2-week downtime where you have sutures to remove and swelling and excessive edema and stuff. Okay, so this is what a liquid facelift is. So it really means that you're using fillers and Botox. What about thread facelift? So if you talk about threads, this is not a liquid facelift. If they say liquid facelift, there are no threads involved, because threads, totally different category. Whether you have the suspension, non-suspension threads, absorbable, non-absorbable threads, plastic surgeon only threads, or those that normal doctors or aesthetic doctors or dermatologists can use. And what makes it different is really the method they use and also where they anchor, because there are a lot of things that if you do not have a surgical qualification, you cannot do, okay? Although a lot of people just do it. This is why I always stress in all of my webinars on Zoom, I always say, make sure you know that the person or the surgeon or the doctor is qualified to do this. So this is a liquid facelift. And bear in mind that a liquid facelift is a specific technique. It is not something that a young doctor who went for a 3 or 5 day course, learns how to inject filler for the nose or the chin, can do. It's not. And the reason being is because it involves a lot of anatomy, and placement of fillers will depend on the anatomy that you need to correct. So we're not talking about, oh, I need a bridge nose and redo a nose. No, that's a nose fit. That's augmentation. This is totally different. Or I need bigger lips, or I need a nicer chin. No. This is a totally different ballgame. And sometimes when you do a liquid facelift, it is really, really subtle that people do not even notice that you have it done. But you know you've had it done because there's improvement of your lines, and your frame actually moves from downward, it moves upward. So what am I talking about frame? Let's look at, before I talk about all this, how the injections are done, first of all, if you want to understand how the facelift works, you also have to understand how the face ages. So you see, when we're young, like even 35 is considered quite old. When you were in our 20s or 30s, you know, all the fat pads are still in the same place and the size is acceptable. And this is why when we were younger, the face tends to look plumper and tighter, and it tends to be like a lot more, I would say, supple. And as you age, and the age is actually quite just a number, in fact, because it depends also how you look after yourself. Because if you're a 35 years old that doesn't sleep, that smokes, drinks like crazy, doesn't use any skincare, goes out in the sun, you're going to have a skin like 55, even though you're 35. Whereas if you're a 45-year-old who actually wears sunblock, looks after the skin, looks after the diet, you wouldn't have a skin, you would actually have a younger looking skin. Okay, so this is just a graphical picture of how the difference in the fat pads. And as you grow older, you tend to lose more and more of the fat pads. And hence you will have the jowls, you'll have the sunken eyes, and you will actually have the empty temples. And that is basically what we fix when we're talking about the facelift, all right? So these are the things that, this is how we look at a person. And if you can see that then the next question would be, where are we really filling up? Are we filling up the fat pads, the superficial fat pads, the deep fat pads on the bone? It really depends on the training of your doctor or your surgeon who does a liquid facelift, whether what is the understanding of anatomy that they have to correct your problem. So like I said, this is not something that some doctor who's just graduated, took an aesthetic course for about a year, tries to do, because in fact filler injection takes years of experience, takes patience, takes a lot of study to understand how to get the good result without you looking so fake. Like nowadays people are obsessed in, oh, I want to look young but I don't want to look like a Barbie. And this is what we talk about. This is why it's important to really have a good person to do it. Now before we go on to before we go on to talking about the facelift, the liquid facelift, let's understand a bit about filler volumes. Now, this is actually fillers. These are real fillers. I was playing around this morning. I had some demo fillers that's not to be injected into human body. So 1 cc is only that size. That's 2 cc, 3 cc, 4 cc, 5 cc. And as you can see, 5 cc of filler is only, it doesn't even fill up a whole tablespoon. And 10 cc is just that much, all right? So when you talk about 2 cc or 3 cc, it's just about the size of a small spoon, a teaspoon, where you put your sugar in. And so why am I talking about filler volumes? It's because a lot of patients think that 1 cc of filler is enough to see a huge difference. And this is where a lot of patients are wrong. Just because 1 cc is expensive doesn't mean that it solves all your problems. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about medical aesthetics, it is actually a premium treatment that you're getting. And you have to be very careful, because if the doctor sells the filler too cheap, then you have to query whether, are they really using original fillers? Are they really trained to do the injections? Because the training and the cost of material is actually very expensive. So this is why there is a discrepancy in the prices of fillers. And when you talk about facelift, I'm already talking about fixing hollows, fixing volume loss. We already know that we cannot do it with just 1 cc. We cannot do it with 1 syringe. We cannot even do it with 2 syringe. Technically, you need about 3 to 5 and ideally up to 10 syringes to actually get the perfect result. Although the good news is you don't have to do it in 1 sitting. Although the bad news is it is a lot of filler. We're talking about a lot of filler, and hence the price of filler is not cheap. Now, in order to give you a good idea about the cost of fillers, now in the US, and this is the country where they're all doing fillers everywhere, the cost per syringe is about 500 to 700 USD. This is for an original filler that is done by a trained, the word is trained, a trained medical doctor, whether a dermatologist or a surgeon. This is the price per syringe. And they're using original. This is actually Restylane or Juvederm. It's at 500 USD per syringe, okay? And if you translate that to ringgit, it's about 2,000 ringgit per syringe, okay? In the UK, if the pound is between 200 to 500 pounds per syringe. And this also depends on the level of the doctor, because in the UK, you have to remember, they have non-doctor injectors, which are trained nurses. So 200 pounds is roughly about 1,002, 1,004. But that is before the pound drop. This is a price that they actually put on from, this is the price that's been going on for years. But before, when pound was 7, it was still expensive, okay? So this is roughly how it's like. And based on the doctor, if you look carefully at the practice, normally it's about 350 to 450 if it is a well-established practice done by a trained medical professional that has a proper license to practice in the UK. Now, from the UK, there are a lot of aesthetic doctors who are not licensed to practice in the UK, hence they sell cheap. Okay, in Australia, in fact, it is 300 to 1,000 per syringe. And bear in mind, even in Australia, you have non-doctor injectors, which normally sell at $300. But if you're talking about medical doctors, trained dermatologists, trained surgeons, or trained aesthetic physicians, usually it is still around $400 to $500 per syringe. 1,000 per syringe is one of those really, really top plastic surgeons. They can sell at that price. Okay, so even in Australia, you times by 3 is still quite expensive. In Europe, it's 200 to 600 per syringe, but the €200 per syringe is always in the Eastern European countries. If you look at Slovenia or Croatia, whereas the 600 per syringe is usually the bigger countries like Italy or in Greece, and even in France, actually it's a lot more. Okay, so it's not that cheap. And you have to also understand that Europe and the US are actually countries that produce fillers. So they minus the import cost, and therefore they can sell a lot cheaper. Okay, in Singapore, let's take our closest neighbor, Singapore. Usually it's around 600 Sing to 1,005 Sing per syringe, depending on the level of the doctor. Waffles actually sells 1,005 per syringe, hands down, and people still go to him. But he's a well-known plastic surgeon, and in Singapore, they sell by the credibility of the doctor. Okay, so in Malaysia also, you can find fillers as cheap as 1,002 all the way to 4,000, depending on the type of filler, depending on the brand of filler, and depending on the doctor's experience injecting the filler. I think in Stella, we're selling about 2,500 per syringe, but because these are all the A brands, that we're only using like Juvederm or Teosal or Bellatero, even Hybel and all this. And this is because it's the A brand fillers. Now, what's the difference between an A brand and a B brand filler? The difference is where it comes from. Like, for example, the A brand fillers are normally from Europe or the US. They are FDA clearance, CA approved. They have multitude of studies. They have a good clinical background and everything. So there's no risk, no complications related to the product. And this is very, very important. And also because they spend on marketing, so they charge us a bomb too, right? Whereas the B class fillers are normally the Korean fillers, where you can actually get it for really, really cheap. But the problem with Korean fillers, again, this is my personal experience with Korean fillers. I find that when you use Korean fillers, one, the result doesn't last long enough. Number two, sometimes you get granulomas, or you get there's an inconsistency. They like to add other things, so it's not just HA. And in the past, I used to use them, but after a couple of years, I actually totally stopped and I said, look, do not give me any Korean fillers. It doesn't last long enough. And I feel that, even for the price, like if I'm going to charge you 1,002 to inject a Korean filler and you have to come back every 3 months, are you willing to do that? Or would you rather pay slightly a bit more, like maybe 2,005 or 3,000 for a filler and last you up to 18 months? So it really depends on what the patient wants. But when you talk about facelift, liquid facelift, you need fillers which have the ability to lift, the ability to give volume, and the ability to last, because you don't want to do this every 6 months. We don't recommend it. Normally, if you do a proper liquid facelift, it should last you between 12 to 18 months, depending on your own activity. Like if you don't suddenly lose too much weight, like go crash dieting, then it should last you for even up to 2 years. And I have patients of mine in the past, which I have done a very, very scheduled, liquid facelift, and you find that they actually only needed a top up after 24 months. Like for 2 years they were quiet, and then maybe around 18 months they say, "Hi doc, I think I need to top up my fillers soon." and you can see that, you know, the structure is still there. There's only a bit of volume loss, and then you top it up and it lasts longer and longer. Okay. So where can we inject? Now, when we talk about liquid facelift, basically what we will be doing is really temples, the cheeks, the jawline, the wrinkles, and these parts. Because what we're going to do is we're going to lift up the whole cheek so that your jowls will totally disappear and you will look refreshed. Because what happens when you age and you lose these volumes, there's nothing holding on to your skin, and the whole thing will drop down and you will have jowls. And you will have lines, and your skin will look very, very, it will look like a bit haggard, and you know, you lose the volume because the volume is lost there. And when you have light hitting onto your face, and then you'll see, oh, you look tired. So normally the complaint is you look tired, you feel that you have jowls. So these are things that you have that we can fix with fillers per se. Okay, and then all the other things like redefining the tip of your nose or adding a bit of volume on your lips, but those are the additional, which is not included in the liquid facelift. So basically, liquid facelift means you're going to lift up your face without using any surgical methods. Okay. Now, how many syringes again? We talked about how many. Just now I showed you the volume of fillers, and then I showed you where we can fix it. So how many syringes? So this is in a young patient using Juvederm. And this is the optimal correction. And even for Juvederm, one syringe you have a bit of correction, nasolabials, 2 syringe, and the 3rd syringe you have a nice one, and after 1 year it lasts, and that's what it looks like. So this is a computer generated figure, which is why it looks a bit funny, but what do you mean? This is basically the concept. Like if you were to use only 1 syringe, you're not going to see the result. Because why? In order to fix nasolabials, basically it is like doing a liquid. It is a liquid facelift method because you need to lift up the whole thing. It's not going to work if you're just going to put fillers here. What's going to happen is it's going to go elongated. In some people, you're going to look a bit funny. Okay. So even in this patient who is young, it requires about 3 cc's of filler, and that will last for 1 year. So if you're going to use less than 3 syringes and you would expect 1, you would not get the most optimum result. Number 2, you may feel that the aesthetic result doesn't last as long as you want it to. But you see, if you treat it with fillers and you did not get the optimal correction, you cannot expect the filler to last more than a year, okay? Because it's not enough. It wasn't enough to begin with, okay? So this is how it works. So how many syringes? So the general rule for liquid facelift, if the patient is about 30 or 30 plus, so it's plus minus 3 syringes. You're about 40, plus minus 4 syringes. 50, about 5, 60, about 6. So you get the idea, right? The older you get, the more volume loss or the more problems we need to fix, the more syringes of fillers that you require. Now, saying this is only limited for lifting of the face, and this is not for doing other things. So, and that's 1. Number 2, this is pertaining that these people are healthy and do look after themselves. If they don't, even your 30-year-old may need up to 5 or even 7 syringes, okay? It really depends on the patient. So yes, it is a lot of syringes. So if anyone comes to me and say, Doc, I want a liquid facelift and you just want to pay for 1 syringe, I really have to tell you, honey, I can't do it. It's impossible. I do not have enough substance. And just now I did show you how small, how little 1 cc really is, okay? Now, but if you do it well, so these are just some random photos that I took off the internet, which I think the doctor's work is not too bad. If you do it well, like for example, you can actually get this form of rejuvenation where you can see, like in this lady, the person fixed under the eyes, the mala area, and also the jowl area. And this is actually using one side is a minimum of 2.5 syringes. So imagine 2.5 one side, so it's about 5 syringes for this lady, okay? It's not one syringe work. It cannot be, oh, sorry, I forgot the temples, 7 syringes. Because the temple itself is already one syringe. It is a bottomless pit. But if you don't fill it correctly, or if you don't fill enough, then you always feel that there's not enough. It's always a hole there. But it is a reality that you need a lot. You really do need a lot. But this is one of the nice ones I found on the internet. A lot of the work done, the ones that you see on the internet, the before and afters, they're not done well because they're not really done by good doctors. And this is another result you can achieve, like you can make the person look slimmer. This is a combination with Botox where they actually put Botox in the masseter to make it smaller, and then they lift it up. If you notice the cheekbone, they lifted it up. They fix the underlying volume loss under the eye to make her eyes look a lot more less tired. And you can see that by doing that, it also lifted the side of the lip upward. And she's young, and even this is at least 1.5 fillers on half part of the face. So it's roughly about 3 mils of filler plus botulinum toxin for the masseters. Okay, so there you go. So liquid facelift, yes or no? It is an instant result without surgery, but I would always say that if you want to do this, you have to sit and really consult with your doctor to plan, because the good news is we can do it in stages like we can tell you, okay, this is what you need fixing, and this is how we can help you fix it. This is as many fillers that you need, and let's work a plan so that we don't kill your budget and you get the best results. Yada, 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 yada. So if you feel like you need to try liquid facelift, you really need to sit and consult with a proper doctor who will actually explain to you what you require. And it has to be like a holistic picture of your whole face. It cannot be like, oh, you can do here, you can do here. Yes, everybody can inject just the nose or the lips, but in order to create a much more lifted face on a person using fillers, it really requires good planning of substance, because fillers are not cheap, and also good planning of volume that you need to put in, because it's not good to tell the patient, oh, I can do this with 2 syringes, and then after doing 2 syringes you don't see the result, right? So yeah, so you always have to understand that. And more doesn't mean it's good, because I have a colleague who sells 20 syringes. Oh, you buy 20 syringes and injects 20 cc of a patient's face. And no, I don't quite like the result, because it looks a bit too fake. Like everybody looks the same. Because you see, the problem with fillers is if you put too much, also you will look like the next person that does the fillers. So this is a give and take. But that I have, the most I've done on a patient's face was actually 19 cc's of filler, and this was because he had extreme volume loss because he was sick. So that's different. So then we had to fix it, and it was like literally 10 cc per side. Okay, so especially for my patients, whoever who's interested, I actually have a package for all this facelifts, liquid facelift, like in terms of fillers, where you can actually purchase the fillers and then you keep it for up to 24 months, and we use it in the process. So this is one simple thing. So that's the end of the presentation. Any questions from the audience? No? Okay. I forgot some. My mouse is broken. Chat box is a bit. Any questions? No? Yes? So anyway, if you have more inquiries or you want to book an appointment, you should always you can always contact Stella Clinic at San Vigio. These are the phone numbers. or you can just go onto Facebook or Instagram and you can just ask a question there, and staff will guide you to this booking appointment. I'm only there by appointment, okay? So if you walk in, it's not really a good idea because most of the time I'm not there. Especially with this current COVID situation, I'm barely out of my house. So anyway, if there is no questions, let me check. I don't see them. Okay, so is there any more questions? Any questions? No, yes, no? Okay, fine. So if there are no questions, I think that's the end of my presentation. I mean, it's a really short one, but let's see, question. No, no questions? Okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the talk. It's a very simple one. I do not post any before after of my own patients because out of confidentiality. And I don't believe in posting before after pictures. So that's why if you ask me for my before after, I normally never give it because it's a lot of process. Medical legally, we need to have like complete patient release by signing, and it's not just a simple I hereby allow you to use picture. No, it has to be specific, like I hereby allow to use picture for what reasons. And I know that sometimes when you go to some clinics and you have to sign the release form, they do not specify what they use your pictures for. And actually, legally, that's wrong. You know, you cannot. You have to actually tell the patient, look, I want to use your picture for teaching purposes or lecture purposes or to show other patients or to put on the website. And this is something that's wrong and you shouldn't do it. So anyway, I think this is the last session I have for Zoom for this month. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure to have all of you. You're all very quiet, and thank you so much. And hope to see you guys again for the next session if we're having any more. Okay, thank you.